Hey, welcome to Psych Cinema, where we explore the psychology found in popular cinema. I'm Jonathan Hetterly, your host, and today we're going to talk about the film La La Land. We're going to dive into some of the psychology of the film, but first let me give you just a little bit of a brief recap and my overall take on the film. It really centers around Mia, played by Emma Stone, and Sebastian, played by Ryan Gosling. He is a hardcore jazz musician who wants to preserve the original type of purity of jazz. She's an aspiring actress. They meet together in Hollywood. And the movie really centers around their relationship. It's a great film. It's actually quite an emotional film. And I know that there have been some people that have talked about how dismissive it is or how kind of fluff it is. And I really think they're not giving the film the proper credit that it deserves, not just as a form of entertainment, but really about the character study that it does provide, even though it may feel glossed over in a musical that really romanticizes Hollywood. But this film really is a character study specifically on relationships. And so we're going to talk a little bit about relationships, even some of the marriage research that we know from John Gottman and other people that really study relationships, and look how that plays out with Mia and Sebastian's relationship. Now, moving forward, there's going to be some spoilers here. So if you're one of the few people that hasn't seen La La Land or doesn't know a lot about it, just want to warn you, we're going to talk a little bit about some spoilers here. So this film really does walk through the stages of a relationship between Sebastian and Mia. And with that, you see the honeymoon phase early on where it's very romanticized. It's the meet cute, the happiness, and just it's a natural way to kind of click and relate because you're getting to know each other and you're really kind of creating interest and shared meaning together. But then this film really dives into the later stages of relationships, which really is about the mundane, the daily grind, when everything is kind of quite predictable and you're integrating a meaningful relationship into the other aspects of your life, like your career, your jobs, the purpose and what gives you meaning and joy in life. And you see that happen as this film progresses. And then finally, this film showcases conflict in a relationship and how these two characters, this couple of Mia and Sebastian, how they navigate conflict in their relationships, especially once they're figuring out what that blend of their personal life and their professional life, their hopes, dreams, what they aspire. But then where does this other person fit into that? And so that's really the arc of this film. Now, John Gottman, he is a researcher out of Seattle, Washington, and he studies relationships, specifically marriage, and looks at principles of what makes marriages and relationships thrive, as well as the things that make marriages oftentimes get into kind of stuck or they're going to be very unhappy and unfulfilled. And I want to talk with you about a few of those principles that John Gottman brings up and how that plays out in Mia and Sebastian's relationship. So he has 7 principles. I'm going to just briefly go through them. His enhance your love maps, nurture your fondness and admiration, turn towards each other instead of away, let your partner influence you, solve your solvable problems, overcome gridlock, and share or create shared meaning. Those are the 7 characteristics of a successful marriage, a successful relationship. And you start to see this in the relationship between Mia and Sebastian, the characters played by Ryan Gosling and Emma Stone. They turn towards each other and they nurture fondness and admiration. What you see with that is that they start to influence each other. So Mia doesn't really like jazz. Sebastian introduces her to jazz. In reality, Sebastian loves jazz enough for the both of them. But his passion, and that's the key, is his passion is very infectious to Mia. And she eventually learns to love jazz because of him. And with that, you also see Sebastian really influences Mia as well to write her own play. If she's struggling getting roles in Hollywood, and Sebastian says, well, then create something just for you. They're influencing each other to the point where with Sebastian, you see this contrast. He's really encouraging Mia to pursue her dreams and to not compromise or quit or settle. But for Sebastian, his relationship with Mia makes him step back and say, should I be so concrete and should I be so rigid in what my future holds? And with that, he compromises and he becomes a road musician in a jazz band that's led by the John Legend character. So even though Mia has been influenced to where she now has appreciation for jazz, she's writing her own play, Sebastian now, because of Mia's influence, he actually takes kind of what we would call a 9-to-5 type of job to support the relationship and provide some stability. And I've read some critiques about this film. They're attaching it to millennials, and they're kind of criticizing how millennials maybe choose a career over relationships. And I really want to reject that criticism. I think that's very unfair both to millennials and also to the film, because if anything, this movie is a reflection of the tightrope balancing act it is of balancing a relationship and a career, especially when you're young or early on in your career, where both require your attention and effort. And so this film really becomes bittersweet because it is about compromise. It's about making choices. It's about conflict. And with a lot of the work I do with couples in marital counseling or just in relationship counseling, a lot of times they're looking for what went wrong or who's to blame, who's more at fault. And the reality that I've found working with couples is most often than not, there's no villains and there's no one to blame. That oftentimes relationships don't work out because they were never meant to. They fulfilled a purpose for a period of time, but they run their course. And so this movie, even though you have sort of the spectacle of old school Hollywood musicals, it really is more of a movie about the bittersweet emotions of happiness and regret, of having to compromise and choose one or the other. And that really actually runs counter to what sometimes people think about millennials or just about young, immature people, is that they want to have it all. And this movie, if anything, says it's really difficult to have it all. That's not really a realistic goal in life. And so there's probably a lot more about this film I haven't touched on today, and I'd love to hear your take on the psychology of the film or even the relationship of Sebastian and Mia, and what were some of the relationship principles you saw in the film. So be sure to comment on the video here. You can also follow us, subscribe to YouTube, follow us on Twitter or on Facebook, and you can also follow me at my Twitter handle, @jhetterly. We'd love to hear your comments. You can also comment some suggestions of, are there any films in particular you'd like for us to talk about here on Psych Cinema. Well, that's it for this episode of Psych Cinema. Be sure to tune in next time. Until then, I'm Jonathan Hetterly, and thanks for watching.